Second only to yoga, I do love being in the garden, and I've stumbled across a quieter way to be in the garden and to be with the garden. We've stopped trying to control this space. We've stopped seeing certain plants as weeds simply because they arrived without permission. Instead, we've started asking a different question. What already belongs here? And it turns out quite a lot does. So these self-seeded columbines have found their own perfect corners of the garden. Columbines, part of the Aquilegia family, have long been loved in cottage gardens, but they also feed early pollinators with their delicate nectar-filled flowers. And this yarrow growing here by the summer house has been used for centuries in herbal medicine, particularly in wound healing. Its Latin name, Achillea, comes from the story of Achilles supposedly using it on the battlefield. The important thing for me is that the pollinators absolutely love it as well. So this flower bed has served lots of purposes. It's been a vegetable garden, it's been a lawn, and this year I've decided to just let it do what it wants to do. There's all kinds of things going on here. We have lots of raspberries that I've obviously planted, and then the rest of the ground is covered in all kinds of things like red nettle, and there is going to be a lot of poppies that are going to come up. And poppies are incredibly important for bees, offering open pollen-rich flowers. They were some of my mum's favourite flowers as well, so they hold a special place in my heart. So I'm also letting this ornamental bed just go a bit wild. It has lots of plants in here that I have planted and that were established before we moved in. Roses and clematis and fuchsia and sage and all kinds of other things. But it also at the moment is housing quite a bit of comfrey, which is one of the great plants of permaculture gardens. Its deep roots pull nutrients up from the soil, helping improve fertility naturally. And traditionally, comfrey was used in poultices for bruises and strains and was sometimes called knit bone. You can also make comfrey tea. If you Google comfrey tea, it makes a really nutrient-rich fertiliser for your garden. And then nettles. These are really important, both the common stinging nettle and red deadnettle and white deadnettle. They all support huge numbers of insects. The amount of bees I see heading for the dead nettles and going up into the little bell-shaped flowers. But they're also great for butterflies, including peacocks, commas, red admirals. Without nettles, many butterflies simply couldn't complete their life cycle. And remember that dead nettles, despite the name, don't sting at all. The bees just adore them, as I've said, especially at this point in the year when little else is flowering. And of course, nettles offer us so many health benefits as well. I love making stinging nettle tea, but also nettle soup. You can make a beautiful pesto with it. You can use it any way that you would use a spinach or any other kind of garden green. So yeah, just be careful to pinch off the top 4 or 5 tips of the plant, and if it looks in any way woody or if there's already seeds, it's probably past its best. It can get a little bit stringy and tough. But this is a good time of year to collect them. And Veronica. Now, Veronica flowers may look small and insignificant. They are springing up in various places on my lawn at the moment. And these tiny flowers, they provide nectar for smaller pollinators that formal gardens often overlook. And I just think they're so pretty. They just remind me of fairies. And in the morning, if you go outside early, you can see kind of the dew just resting in the little upturned flowers. I just think they're adorable. And here we've got ragwort, which once it starts flowering will give us the most beautiful yellow sort of daisy shaped flowers, and it's enormously important for wildlife in the garden. It supports dozens of insect species, including the cinnabar moth, and their striking caterpillars almost entirely rely on the ragwort plant. Historically, ragwort has been used for wound poultices, for applying externally to cuts, ulcers, burns, sores and any kind of swelling. Also for rheumatism and muscle and joint pain. Some historic herbals mention it for menstrual problems, although this would absolutely not be considered safe now. It can also be used for dyeing fabric, so the flowers can produce yellow and green dyes. What I would say though is that modern herbalism generally avoids internal use because ragwort can, if ingested, cause serious and irreversible liver damage over time. It's got a really bad rep when it comes to grazing animals, horses and cattle, because it can be not good for them at all, but really, really good for the pollinators. So I'm leaving it where it is. I don't have any grazing cattle or horses in my garden. And then here's the borage that simply appeared here on its own. Borage is sometimes called the bee plant, so that gives you an idea of how popular it is with our bees. The flowers replenish their nectar incredibly quickly, so it makes them a pretty constant food source for pollinators throughout the day. Traditionally, borage was associated with courage, don't know whether it's because there's a little half rhyme there, and also for uplifting the spirit, and historically it's found its way into herbal drinks and kitchen gardens alike. It could be a really nice accompaniment to a salad. The flowers are really pretty, and it's also a great companion plant for strawberries. So if you're growing strawberries, having borage nearby would be a really good idea. So my garden wouldn't be to everybody's taste. It might look a little bit wild. It may in places look, some might say, a little bit unkempt. But the garden hums. It hums with wildlife. And the more we leave space for wildness, the more life appears. There are bees everywhere, hoverflies, butterflies, birds, frogs in the long grass, and the whole space feels alive in a way that it really wouldn't do if everything was so tightly controlled. This is why movements like No Mow May matter so much. When we mow constantly and tidy obsessively, we remove food and habitat at exactly the time wildlife needs it most. If we let lawns flower even briefly, it creates nectar for pollinators emerging after winter. It will allow the insects to complete life cycles, and it will give shelter, seed and biodiversity back to spaces that have become increasingly sterile, sadly. And honestly, the whole thing just feels deeply connected to yoga philosophy to me. Because yoga teaches us to pay attention to our relationship with the world around us. It asks us to move away from domination and towards connection. So there's ahimsa here, non-harming, in choosing not to poison, not to eradicate every living thing that inconveniences us. There's aparigraha, non-grasping, releasing the need for absolute control and perfect aesthetics. There is santosha, contentment, learning to appreciate what naturally comes instead of constantly striving for something more curated and polished. And there is Ishvara Pranidhana too, the practice of surrender. This is a biggie for me. Trusting life a little more, allowing nature to co-create the space with us instead of treating the garden like a problem to solve or something to conquer. Instead of going out there and thinking, oh, these weeds are taking over, I need to get rid of them. No, be selective, be mindful. I'm looking at the weeds, if you want to call them weeds, that I want to keep, that I want to see, that I want to nurture. And the ones that, really are in the wrong place, the ones that are, in my view, not attractive in the place that they find themselves, okay, I'll mindfully get rid of those and compost them. But the garden in this way is a relationship and not a project. I'm not possessive about it. Nature was there first. It's a conversation rather than a dictatorship. The prickly plants, they've got to go because I walk barefoot in my garden every day. But overall, I'm learning to collaborate with the land a little more instead of fighting it. Because in my view, the plants that people are calling weeds are simply the plants most willing to heal disturbed ground. And perhaps us humans aren't so different. So I'd love to know, if you've got a garden, how you keep it, how you work with it, your relationship with your garden. Let me know in the comments.